Okay, so today we're going to talk about methods. Methods is just a term in Java, and it works like what we call functions in other languages. So when you talk of a function, something that simply does work or that performs something specific. So in Java, we call them methods. So we're going to look at the syntax or the anatomy of a method, what goes into it, what it does, and so on and so on. But before we get to actually talking about what methods are, now when we're doing the for or the loops, we did a for loop where we summed numbers from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, depending on whatever we wanted to do. And so suppose you want to have a situation like this, where you want to add 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 10. You can create a loop and tell it to add, keep looping and adding until whatever you are using to check is greater than 10. Once it goes above 10, then the loop stops. Or yes, so if you want to do the first one, that's what you do. The second one, the same thing from 20 to 37. So you write code like this. So you do public static void. Okay, we don't need to worry about that. Sum is 0. Now, this is our for loop. We start with the initialization that we talked about, checking, executing, and incrementing. So that's how the for loop works. Like we said, this one works only once. So you initialize I to 1. Then you check whether I is less than 10. If I is less than 10, we execute this statement. Now, what does this mean? We are taking I and adding to what is in sum. Now, if we take out the plus and it's only equal to, then that's an assignment. You are going to replace what is in sum. But plus equal means you are adding. So if sum was 10 and I'm adding I, which is 1, I'm going to get 11 in sum. But now sum is 0. So the first iteration, I is 1. So we are adding 1 to the 0. So sum will become 1, but that is not all. We now move the loop back to this. So we increment I by 1. So I becomes 2. Then we check if this is true. Then we increment this or we add I here again. So by then I will be 2. I less than 10, that's true. So we add 2 to the 1 originally. So sum will now be 3. Then we come increment I by 1. I becomes 3. We check, is it less than 10? Yes. So we add 3 to sum. So what we're doing is that we're adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 up to 10. The moment you get I being 10, then this is false because 10 is not less than, no, yeah, 10 is equal to 10. So this is less than or equal to. So this is still true. And when I gets to 11, then the loop ends because 11 is not less than or equal to 10. So if you want to add the numbers 1 to 10, that's what you will do. You start with I being 1, and then as you add, you increment until you get to 10 and it stops. If you want to add 20 to 37, you do the same thing. This is just an example. It can be any numbers. You want to add 35 to 49, you do the same thing. Now, what we're doing here, we're just printing out the sum of 1 to 10 is this. Now, you just concatenate the variable sum here, and so it will print it out. So if you are going to do this, then, if you want to achieve things like this, then it means you have to be doing so far what we've learned. We have to be doing this step by step. But the question is, isn't there a better way of doing it? So if I look at the first, where is it, my methods? The demo, let's see. No, not this one. So let me, where did I save this? Oh, I've overwritten it. I think I overwrote it. Okay. Let me look at the So this is my methods demo one. Yes, so I thought I have it.
Look beneath the method. You have
Demo.
my other method.
Yeah, not that one. That is, we'll come to that. That is,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm looking for, I think I've overwritten it. My methods demo. Okay, for some reason. Okay, let me create. So if I
So it's there.
go, my methods
Yeah.
demo,
Oh, okay.
you know, I can't see it. I had it, but I think I overwrote. I sort of probably deleted it without repeat addition operator. This is my methods. No, it's not in the methods demo. No, so I'm surprised because I had it. Anyway, so oh, okay, it was on the other. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is that let's create a new class. So we call this my methods demo one. So this is just okay, finish. All right, so this is what we have. So I can copy what we have here. So if I end this, so that I can copy all this starting from here. I don't need to copy the main method. So copy that. I can bring it here and paste it. Okay. So this is what we're doing. So we have the first one, we are summing 1 to 10. And we want to print it out. The sum from 1 to 10 is this. The second one, we are summing 20 to 37. So we print it out. The third one, we're summing 35 to 49. There are too many closing braces here. Okay. Yeah. So I'm simply printing out this. So if I run this, then what am I getting? I'm getting away from this 6 and 3. Something is confusing the system here. I have something else running, but run this. Yeah, so says sum from 1 to 10 is 55. So what it has done is that it has looped through from 1 to 10. Finally, when I is 11, it stops, and then it adds and it prints them out. Then 20 to 37 is this, and so on. It can be any, so I can repeat if I want maybe 100 to 200. I can copy this, and just paste, and then change this from I starting from 100, and I'm checking whether I is less than or equal to 200. Then I'll simply say that, okay, sum from 100 to 200 is this. Yeah, so I run this and it's the same thing. It's just, so the question now is, I mean, so if I want to do this several times, must I be coding like this continuously? Isn't there a way I can just have one code like this? And then anytime I wanted to print the sum of this to this, I just simply provide those two numbers, and then the method will execute and print them out. So this is where the whole idea of methods come in. So here, if we now, okay, I think I have that my methods. No, this is a different one. Okay, I don't even have that. Okay. So let me go back to the, yeah, so what we're saying here is that it can be achieved by writing the code once and then calling it anytime you want it to print or to do whatever you want to do. You can then call it or you invoke it. So in Java, we say you can call the method or you can invoke it. So you define the method, tell it what it should do. Anytime you need to run that code or you need to perform that function, you simply call the method. So this is how the method will look like. So I can end this and copy this so that we'll just, so I'm going to call this my methods demo 2. So I'm creating another, let me clear this, another class, new class. So my methods demo 2. So this was demo 1, this is demo 2. Okay, finish here. And then I paste this. Now, so what are we seeing here? Public, I'm having an error with demo. Okay. There's something that is, well, I'll come to that. It's probably, yeah, okay. Probably, oh, okay. I'm having two of these main methods. So now the main method is the one that Java uses to run, and that is the application. But it doesn't necessarily have to be at the top like we have been doing. You see that it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere in your code. You know, if you start running, what it will do is that Java will start looking for the main method. So it will ignore all these ones and come to the main method. So when it starts executing, then if there's a need to access any other code, whether above or below, then it will do that. It doesn't matter how long your file is or how many lines of code you have. So if you look at what we are having here, this is a method. We'll come to look at the anatomy or the definition shortly. But what I've got is public static ints, and then I have sum. So what do we have here? We have sum, then we said int, first int, second int. Now what we're doing here is that we want to call this method, and when we call it, we want it to run this loop. Maybe let me use count so that it doesn't confuse us. So we're using count, and then count, and then the result is equal to counts. Okay, so count less, okay, count plus plus. So I'm using the count as my checker, or what we'll check. So the first thing the method will do is that we are saying that anytime we call on this method, whatever, let's move some of it. Yeah. Anytime we call on this method, we are saying that we'll provide two integers. So if I wanted to add from 1 to 10, so if I call on the method, I'll provide 1 and provide 10, and then it will take the 1 and then assign to first int, take the 10 and assign to second int, and then it will run the loop. So here count will be 10, I mean 1 less than or equal to 10, just like that, the one we're doing. So rather than typing it, rather than assigning values, or we're using I anyway, rather than assigning values like this, what we are saying is that we don't want to assign the values in the code. What we want is, we want to have the method that is there, but anytime we want any two range of numbers, 100 to 200, maybe 1,000 to 10,000, whatever, I don't need to be printing them separately. I simply call this method, and then I provide those two numbers, and it will loop through, because it's the same thing. So the first integer, and then the second integer, less than or equal to, and then it will increment this, and then just run the loop. So now, once I've written this method, it is there. Now I come to public. Let me cut this out so that it doesn't, I'll paste it back shortly. Now, so now this is our main method. So this is what is going to run as Java. So when you run the application, it's going to print out sum from 1 to 10 is, then it will call the method, and the method is sum. So when it calls the method, it provides 1 and 10. And what does it do? It takes the 1, puts it in first int, takes the 10, puts it in second int, and then it runs through by adding 1 to 10. So result here is going to be adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 10, and it will return the result. We'll say it returns. So we'll come to talk about that. And so once it's returning the result, what's happening is that once you ask it to print, it will simply call the method does all this, and then returns the result, and you can print it. And so if I run this, it's going to give us, the sum from 1 to 10 is 55, because I provided 1 and 10. So now if I want to do the others, I don't have to come and then do this again. If I want to do 20 to 37, all I need to do is that I ask it to print, but then when it gets to this, it should call the method, and I provide it 20 and 37, and then it will run. If I want to do 35 to 49, the same thing. I can even add the one I said, maybe I can say 100, 100 to 200. Okay, 200 is that. So I'm going to have 100 here. So 100 becomes the first int, 200 becomes the second int. And so the code starts from 100. And then, of course, here it says count is first int. So we have assigned the 100 to count. So the first iteration is going to add 100 to the result. The result started at 0 to add 100. Then it would increment it by 1. It becomes 101. And then it goes on and on. So this is a, so if I run this, yeah, so I haven't changed the other one, but anyway, so you can see from 100 to 200 is that. Okay, this I didn't change that anyway. So what it means is that we have got the method sitting there. Anytime, so anytime I try to highlight this one, anytime I need it, I just call the method, provide the 2 integers, and it will run. It doesn't, I don't have to be on this, we'll come to see that anyway. I don't have to be in this class. I can create another class. No, so I can do something like this. So let me just quickly create. So if I say new class, then this is my methods. Oh, who is that? Okay. Demo 3. Okay. Finish. Okay, so in this case, we can look at this. I can simply now say that my methods demo 2 dot sum now, and then I provide 20, and then what, maybe 40. Okay, put a semicolon there, and that's so let me clear this. So if I do this, what is happening? I'm calling the method sum, but it is in another class. It's in the method, but if I run it, it will still work. It will still say sum of, where is it?
So is this 40 or 040?
Oh, yeah. 20, yeah, that makes it, yeah. So we get a runtime error. Yeah, okay. So it's 0 to 40, method demo 2. I should call the method. Am I not getting it? Yeah, my methods demo 2. Yeah, so sum is here. I provide the first integer, second integer. It's public, and so methods demo 2 sum. So once you provide 20 and 40, it should run. Run as Java application. I don't know why it's not appearing. Let me see. Have I omitted something? No. There's no error here. So sum 20. Because of the space. Let me see. No, there's still an error somewhere. Okay, let me see. Now, so what we are doing is that we are calling the method from the other. Oh, okay. I need to not just that, because it's returning. Sorry, I was doing it's returning I have to do this system out print sum from, so 1 to 10. Okay. So instead of just saying plus sum, I'm going to say plus, let me delete this, my methods demo2 dot sum, and then I'll close this. So what I'm doing here is now is that I'm printing this out, and then I'm providing the 2 integers. And so if I run this, then it will put in the sum from 1 to 10. But actually I'm having 20 to 40. So this should be 20 to 40. We'll do this another time anyway. So you realize that even though the method is not here, you can access it from another file by simply providing the class name, dot the method. And then you provide the information that the method requires. So this is just now, so what it means that we can have a simple code. So it means I can have 100 files, anywhere in my program that I want to add a set of numbers from one to the other. I will simply call the method and provide those two numbers, and then it will do it for me. I don't need to physically, create, do a systems out, that is, I don't need to physically keep doing this. You just create the method once, and then so long as it is there, you can always reuse it. So that's the, so now what we're going to talk about is, yeah, okay. So we are saying that a method is a series of statements that carry out a task. So, and a class can contain an unlimited number of methods, or you can have as many methods as you want. They tend to simplify the code. So methods simplify code, and they can be reused any number of times, of course. So we know once you've created it, you can just, like I'm using the sum over and over again. You can use it as many times as you want. So what does a method entail, or what goes into the method? So before you can use the method, there are some things you need to do for it to work. First is the declaration or the header of the method. We'll come to look at that. Then there's an opening brace, a closing brace that becomes the block or the method, the body of the method. And then of course the opening, the body, and then the closing. So anytime you call the method will execute what is within the body. Some methods will return something, others will not, but we'll come to discuss that shortly. So the method declaration at the top contains the following. We have what we call the access modifiers. We've come across this already. It modifies access. So these are keywords in Java that modify access. It can be private, can be public, can be static, and all those things. Now, we already know some of these. I think some lecturers, hold on. Yes, yes, okay. So we have in the declaration, there's what we call the access modifiers that I've mentioned already. Then there's a return type. So a return type is simply like some methods return something, others don't. So if I give an example of my usual Kofi's house and so on. Now you can have Kofi's house as a class. Then you can create an object, Amma, in the class. Then there can be a method called cook. Now, so if I just say Amma.cook, what it means is that I'm asking Amma, the object, to perform the function or the method cook. Now, but if we realize that if you cook, what are you going to do? You are going to bring back food, obviously, because you can't just cook and that ends it. So the cook method will have to return some food. So when Amma goes to cook, of course, she's going to bring back food. But I can also have another method like mow the lawn, for example. So mow the lawn. And if I have John in the house, I can ask John to go and mow the lawn. Now, that's also a method or a function the person is performing. But in mowing the lawn, he's not coming back with anything. He's not returning something. So that method, we say, does not return anything. So some methods return values or whatever, others don't. So any method that's going to return, we call that the return type, and we indicate, is it returning an integer? Is it returning a double? Is it returning a character or a string or whatever? Now you need to indicate what it's going to return. And of course, the method has a name, and then we have our parentheses open and close. And then there's something called arguments. We'll come to that, or what we call parentheses. I mean, what we call parameters. So we'll come to that. So if I have this example here, so if I write public static void get my address. Now, the first thing there, public, again, like we said, is the access modifier. Okay. So when we say it's public, it means it's publicly accessible. So I can create a method and make it public. Now, if you make it private, what it means is that you can use it within that class, but it will not be accessible from another class. And that is just, so if I have Kofi's house and I have Mensa's house, Kofi's house, I have Amma. So I can say Amma.cook inside Kofi's house. If I make Amma public, I can sit in Mensa's house and just say, go to Kofi's house, just like we did here. So here, you realize that we had, we'll see more of that anyway. We have sum, and then you can provide your first integer and second integer. And so within here, I can call sum. Now I go to another class here, and all I've done is that I'm saying go to this class, dot sum, and I provide this. Now, so what it means that if sum were not public, so here, if I make this private, private means, oh no, not the main method. The main method is public. Of course, the main method has to be public. This one, so no, this public static integer. Now sum, so if I were to make this private, now that's fine. I don't get any problem here. No, but if I go to the other class and I try to go to my methods demo and pick sum, then you realize that there's an error. It's not seeing it because sum is private. So if I have Amma in my Kofi's house and Amma is private, you cannot sit in Mensa's house and just call Amma to come and cook or to cook food for you because Amma is private. But of course, when you make it private, it doesn't make sense because we want the methods to be accessible so that anywhere we can use them. So we always make it public. So we have this we call access modifiers. So that is the public. So it means publicly accessible. Any class can use the method. So long as they're all in the same application, any class can use it. Now, when we use the word static, again, we have a method which can be used anywhere within the class. So within a particular class, so in Kofi's house, if I declared Amma as static, anybody in Kofi's house can call Amma because, I mean, she's available in the class. I've made it static. And whether you are at the top, even if it's a story building, whether you are at the top or you are at the bottom or wherever you are in the code, at any point you can call on the method and it's accessible. Now, if you don't make it static, what it means is that it will only execute where it is. So when you are running the code, where you encounter the method, it will only execute there and that ends it. When you go to another part of the class and you want to call it, it's not accessible. So static is almost all methods will have static because you want to be able to use it. Then void means the method doesn't return anything. Wow, I'm getting feedback. Wow, I'm getting feedback from, yeah, okay. So the word void means this method will not return anything. It's just like the mowing the lawn example I gave. So mow the lawn, that's all. I don't expect you back. Once you go and mow the lawn, that's fine. But if I say cook, I expect I'm sitting down and waiting for food to be brought. So when you say void, it means it doesn't return anything. If I replace this void with int or double or character or whatever, then it means this method, once it runs, is going to return something. And then we have the name of the method. So most of the times we stress that the name should make sense. So if I say get my address, at least it will tell anybody reading that this has to do with somebody's address or an address, because it says get my address. We don't just want to put abstract things like money or those, they don't carry any meaning. So, yeah. Some people are unmuting themselves. And then, yeah, okay. If you want to, if you want to talk, raise your hand and I'll mute you too. Okay. All right. So the name of the method, and then we have the opening and the closing parentheses. So once this follow, any name in Java, that becomes the name of the method. Oh, this one, what is this problem? Okay. All right, so here we have the parenthesis, and the parenthesis simply means that this method is empty. It doesn't receive anything. We'll come to talk a bit more about that as well. So it's just like if again, if I'm going to create a method called cook, sometimes I might want it to cook something specific. So I would want to put something here. So I can say cook maybe rice. So I have to put rice in there. But if I leave it empty, then it means the cook can be anything. Of course, it will depend on what is defined in the body of the method. But for now, when you see it like this, it means the method doesn't take what we call arguments. And we'll come to see more of that. So let me clear this. Okay, so now these are your access modifiers, and they are standard. Most of the times to have clean code, I mean, to avoid mistakes somewhere along the line. Okay. To avoid mistakes somewhere along the line, it's better to just always have your methods as public, static, and then either void or integer or double or whatever, depending on whether it will return a value or not. If you start changing this, well, sometimes it will work, but you never know. You'll be at another class and probably you want to invoke the method, you might have issues. So this is just standard that we use. So if we look at this code here, we have this simple code, my methods. As for this one, I don't think I can. Okay, hold on. Coding. Okay. Okay, so this code here, we have, if we look at the code, we have this system.out.println, my addresses, and then we say get address. So what have we done? We have called the method. Now, because the method is within the same class, all we need to do is just do this, get address. It's just like we're doing the sum and that. If you go to another class, then you need to indicate which class this is. And because this method doesn't take any arguments, we just say get address, put the parentheses and the opening and closing. And what it means is that at this point, the compiler or the computer will look for a method in the code called get address. Now this is very simple, so we've got it here. So it will look for the get address and see what is in it, and then it will execute that. So get address, we've declared get address as public, static, void, and that. And we say that anytime you call this method, it should simply print out post office box, this, 3 lines, and that is it. So any point in the code that I call this method get address is going to print this out, these 3 lines of code. So if I go to, let me clear this. Clear this. So if I go to, I wanted to have these things running side by side. Okay, I think I have this one. And my methods. Yeah. Okay, so here, let me cut this out for now so that it doesn't confuse us. Okay. So what do we have? So clear this. So I've started executing, this is our main method. I started executing this, so I print my addresses, and then that ends it because that's the opening and closing. So this will end as my addresses. But as we come down, we see that we encounter a method. So the compiler is going to look for where the method is. So it sees the method here, and then the method says, oh, anytime you call me, all I'm going to do is that I'm going to print these 3 lines of code. So if I run this, what I'm going to get is that I'm going to have my addresses, and then to have the PO box, this, and so and so. So what it means that I can always change this address, whatever, and then if I call the method, it's going to print the same thing. And so we can also have another one, so be here, another get your address this time. So anytime I call this, it's going to print, so I can print the space. Normally, if you want to have so system dot out dot println, okay, puts, I can do this, okay, close this. So yeah, I closed this. I need to close this. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. No, 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 can't close it. So what I want to do is that once I execute this method, now I want to print space and then have a, no, this shouldn't be here. It should be in the, it shouldn't be here. It should be in the, under the main method, because it's the main method that we want. So I want to print get address, or call get address, print this, and then call get your address. Okay, so this, okay, so you realize that I'm calling this one. So if I clear this, and then I'm calling this one as well. So I'm going to say my addresses. So if I print this, or if I run this, now I'm calling two methods. First, I say my address is this. That is the first method. It prints this out, then prints a space, and then I call this one, and then it prints this one out as well. This is so you can have several methods, and then you can always call them anywhere in your code, so long as it's within the main method. So you can do any other thing that you want at any point. You can call the method, and then it will execute. So in this case, all we are doing is that we created a method, and then because this method doesn't take in any parameters or anything, or what we call arguments, when you are calling it, you just use the name as it is. So the name, and then the open and closing parentheses. So this is simply creating a method and then calling it. Now, like the one we did, you can have another class, which we've done already. I think this is my methods, my other methods. Okay. So if you look at this, which we have already covered, so this is another class, but we have this. So I'm going to my methods and I'm calling get address. And then the same by methods get your address. So you don't see all those details here, but when I run it, I get my address is this. Your address is okay. This time I've added your address is that. So you can see all these are not in this file or in this code. They are in another file. So that's why we say methods will help simplify the code. So and that's the beauty of computing anyway. Once you've created it, you don't recreate it anywhere. So long as you make it public, you can always just access it and get it to do whatever you want to do. So that's a simple method that for now, that doesn't take in any arguments. But what we're going to say is that there are some methods require what we call arguments, or sometimes you hear the word parameters. So the arguments are the things that the method requires for it to be able to function. So when you write that method in the declaration, you need to indicate whether the method will receive arguments or not. And you need to show the type of arguments as well as the I'm getting feedback. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so here, yeah. Let me see again. All right, so anytime you are creating a method that takes arguments, you need to indicate what type of argument it is, whether it is an integer, double, or whatever, and then you need to provide a name. And so when we did the first thing we did, for example, when we're doing the sum, that is this my methods demo. Yeah, you can see that for this methods demo 2. So this public static ints. Now, if we had put void, then you see that when you highlight the int, it's saying return, because this is once you put this is a return value type. Once you put int here, then it means this method sum is going to return something. If we were to put void, it wouldn't. But this is taking 2 arguments. So these are what we call the arguments or parameters. They are used interchangeably anyway. So once you define the method, now you indicate that it's going to take 2 integers. Now, so anytime you are calling the method, you must provide these 2 integers. Else, you are not going to get it to work, because I have, again, going back to my cook example. So here I've got, okay, so I've got a method called cook. Now, if I say ama.cook and I leave it open, what it means is that that is not going to take any arguments. So in that case, it's open. Ama can cook anything. But if I say if I'm defining the cook method and I put inside maybe rice or beans or whatever, then anytime I'm going to call ama to do the cooking, I need to provide that, because that method works with only rice and beans. If I leave it open, it can be anything. And so we say that these methods take arguments. And so when you are defining those methods, you need to indicate the type of the argument as well as the name. So if you look at this one, public void, we've left out the static. We have to include static. Okay. Square age. So square age is the name of the method. Now we have integer my age. So what we're saying is that because the method is taking arguments, you need to provide the type and then the name. So the type is an integer, and then the name is my age. So at least the names mean something. So in this case, now it's saying that within this method, from opening to closing, anytime you invoke this method or you call this method, it's going to run this. It's going to declare a variable called result. Then it's going to take my age, multiply it by my age. So what it means is that if it is 10, it's going to take 10, multiply by 10. And then it will say when you, no, not double, when you square my age, you will get this. It will concatenate the result in there. Let me see whether I have it in code so that we can easily see that. I don't always like this ending, and it's a way of, I'm trying to get that. Okay, so here, do I have it? I think I had it somewhere. Anyway, so here, let me see, my methods, the more, okay, square age, yeah. So this we have, okay, I was demonstrating, but for now, let me just, I was demonstrating how to call overloading. Let me just comment this so that it doesn't confuse us, okay. So if you look at all this, let me comment this as well, square age. Oh, okay, it's rather this, that is, we'll come to this one, something we call overloading, which, so I need to comment this out at, out as first. I don't want to cut it all off, and then, so let me comment this. Okay, so if you look at this, now our main method, and now we've called square age, we provided 45. And that is because when we define the method square age, we said it should take an integer by age, or an integer, or take an integer. And when you take the integer, what does it mean? It's going to assign it to my age. So what the compiler will simply do is that if I call square age and I provide 45, it's going to assign 45 to my age. And now it's going to run this. It's going to add my age to my age, that, and then assign it to result. And then it will say, when you double my age, you get that. So you concatenate the result in there. So let me clear this. So if I run this, So I run this, and then it says, when you don't close this thing, it messes up the other one is still running. So I need to do it manually. Go to run as, this saying something is, I have made my main method here. There's no error. So run as application. Okay, so it says when you double my age, you get 90. And that's because what we did was we called the method and we provided 45. So it takes the 45, assigns it to my age, and then it does this calculation, puts the sum in my results, and then it prints this out. Now, it's not returning anything. It's simply printing out something. And so it's void. If we were going to return something, we have to indicate that in there. So for here, anytime you have void, then there's no return. Now, I can't put return here. The moment you put return, then you're going to get an error because void doesn't return anything. So if I put integer, I can say return integer, but we'll see those ones shortly. Okay, so you have got a method. So this one takes one argument, and then we have another one here that takes two arguments. So my age and your age, but we'll come to this when we are discussing overloading. So I'll leave it at that. So it means you can have a method that will take one argument or more than one. It can be two, it can be three. It's all up to the person writing the program. And so that's an example here. Yeah, I've already done this. So square age, provide the number. And then this one is, well, square is actually multiplying. You multiply your age by your age. The other one should be double age anyway. Now, of course, you get the name can be anything anyway, so long as you are consistent. You can say double my age or square Kofi's age or whatever. It's all up to the person. So the method, yeah, like we said, can require more than one argument. So you pass multiple arguments to a method by listing the arguments within the call to the method, separating them with commas. So you have integer my age, integer your age. That is the method sum. So if you are going to call sum, you will simply provide the name sum, and then you provide two integers. So in this case, when you are calling this method, you say sum 22, 32, of course. Now it will take the 22 assigned to my age, take the 33, so 22, it will assign to my age, take the 32, assign to your age, then it will add them, put in results, and then it will print this. So when you sum our ages, you get result. So in this case, the two are different. If you are going to call the method, you need to ensure that the way you define the method, that's the way you have to call. I mean, you have to provide the arguments. So if the method says I'm taking an integer and a double, then when you are calling it, you have to provide an integer and a double. If it is only integers, if it's a double and a float, you have to make sure you provide the same thing. So else you run into problems. So methods take arguments, others don't. So in this case, I don't need to end the show now. Okay, so some methods can also be made to return values. So it can return either an integer, character, a double, or whatever. They can even also return a Boolean, true or false. If a method doesn't return anything, then it is void. So we put void in there. And so for a method to return a value, a keyword return is always at the end before you close. You say, okay, you can do this and that, but return a value. And so if a method that returns a value is called, what it does is that it simply returns that value. And so when it returns the value, sometimes you need to take it and assign to a variable. So you can have a variable that you've declared. And now you just say, call the method, provide arguments, if it will take those arguments, and then it will simply return those arguments. But we'll see some examples shortly. So if you look at this, what do we have? Again, public static int. So now that there's integer here, it means it's going to return an integer. And then the method name is sum, and then it's taking two integers. So int I and int j. Because this I and j and x and y, normally we don't prescribe that, but just for demonstration purposes. So here, if I have, so the method name is sum. No, we're just using sum repeatedly, but no. So if I'm going to call sum, I'm going to provide two integers. What will it do? It will take, first of all, it will declare a variable called result, assign 0 to it. Now it will take what is in I, add to what is in j, and assign to results. And then it will return the results. So what it means that this is not going to print anything. It's going to simply return the result. So now when it's returning the result, you have to take it and assign to a variable. So again, it's just like the cook example that I gave. So if you ask Amma to go and cook, now you need to say something. I mean, if the food is coming, where is it going to? Is it going to your uncle or your, so you can decide where the food goes to. So when you are returning something, it needs to be taken into a variable or whatever. But if it's not returning anything, of course, you don't need to worry about that. In most cases, it will simply just execute and then it will end. So let's see, let me clear this and then we can, okay. So go next here. So I want us to look at this code. So what do we have here? We have, again, our main method. And now here, what are we seeing? Square age, and we provided 40. What it means is that there's a method called square age that takes an argument, probably an integer. So it's just an integer argument. And so when I'm calling it, I have to provide that integer. Then I have another line here. It says int both ages. So I've declared a variable, both ages, and I'm assigning something to it. But if you look at it, what am I assigning? I've got add ages 10, 15. So what does it mean? It means add ages is another method, but this time this method takes two integer arguments. So when I call it, I'm providing those ones. But like I said, when that method executes, it's returning something. And that's why I've got a variable ready for it to return. So when it's returning, whatever it is, I will take it and assign to a value. Yeah, somebody's hand is up, Jonathan. Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Or I have to, let me see. Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yes.
With the square age, what is the data type?
What is the
Data type.
Okay. Well, it can be anything, but so long as I'm just providing 40, it means it's an integer. Oh, so it's an integer. But okay, let's look at them. Let's look at the methods here. So these are them. So there's square age, and then there's the add ages. So these are the two methods. They are all within the same file anyway. So you can see that square age is taking an integer as an argument, and it is 1. So anything you provide is going to take it and assign to my age. You know, so when you're calling the method, you provide one integer. Add ages is another method, and then it takes two arguments or two integer arguments. So when you are calling add ages, you need to provide two integers. Now the whole idea is this method returns something. See, it returns something. This doesn't have a return, so it's void. So you see that this method is void. It doesn't return anything. This one has int. So public static int add ages, public static void. So when you call this method, it's simply going to do something. It's going to take my age, multiply by my age. Okay. So when you call it and you provide 10, it will take 10, multiply by 10, and then assign it to results. And then it will simply go ahead and print this. It's not returning anything. So it just like I said, go and mow the lawn. So it goes to do this, put this here, put this there, it mows the lawn, and it's done. It doesn't return anything. So it's void. But this method here, add ages, is taking two integers. It will assign one, the first one to my age. The way the order you submit the integers is the same order that will be assigned. So the first will be assigned here, the second here. And now it's going to take, it will declare a variable called our ages, and then add the two ages, and then assign it to our ages, and then it will return. So it means when you call this method, it's going to bring back an integer. Now, when it's bringing it back, what do you do with it? You have to have a variable ready to receive it. Again, it's like asking Amma to cook. So when Amma is cooking, there should be somebody ready to eat. Maybe you or your uncle or whatever it is. So by the time you are calling the method, that variable is ready. You see, so when it's being returned, then it assigned to that variable both ages. And so you can also now print out, when you sum our ages, you get this. Let me see whether I have it my methods demo too, so that we can see what we're talking about. Okay, so and this, do I have my methods demo? Is that the one that I did earlier on? Oh no, this is I don't have it here. Okay, so let me just quickly copy this. Yeah, so we have, I'm just starting from here. Okay, so copy this. We're going to create another class. Now I'm having so many classes in the new class. Okay, I can just say demo methods so that we don't run into any problems. Finish. Okay, let me clear this. So demo methods, let me paste it. Okay, so we have our main method here. So it is going to execute. And then we have square age. We provided 40. And so that is the square age method there that we created. And so what it means is that when you call this method, you need to provide an integer. Provide the integer, it does this and it prints out this. When you square my age, yeah, you get that. And then we have another method here. So these are two different methods. This method is called add ages. And so when you're calling it, when you're calling it, you have to provide two integers. And so it will take them and then add them and then return. I think I have too many closing braces there. Okay. So once it's returning this, it's going to be returning an integer, because that's the integer that it's returning. So as it's returning it, you need to take it and assign to a variable. That's where we have the both ages there. So in this case, it's just like I'm saying, I've created a method called mow the lawn. So, and then maybe I'm saying that anytime I say mow the lawn, I should provide an integer so that it will know the number of times to mow it. So I can say 3. So mow the lawn 3 times. Okay. So I can just call that method mow the lawn, provide the 3, and it will execute it. Now I have another method that returns something. So again, to cook. So I say how much should cook, but that method has 2 arguments. So I can say cook, maybe rice and beans or whichever. And so when I'm calling Amma to do the cooking, so once I just say the cook, I need to provide those 2 arguments. And so it will now go ahead, process whatever it's going to do, and return the food. So when it's bringing it back, I should have somebody ready to take it, because you can't leave it hanging, because that method, we said methods are things that do work. And when they do the work, some of them are returning something. So they can bring it back and then it is hanging. So Amma can't carry the food, come, and she's standing there and nothing, there's nobody to take it. And so once you are calling that method, you should be ready to receive whatever it is returning. And so that's why we've declared this variable here, both ages. And so as it's returning it, we take it and then we assign it here. And we can print out the both ages here. So if I run this, we are having this. When you square my age, you get 1600 because the square is 40. So it will put in there, when you square my age, you get this. And now when you sum our ages, you get 25 because I provided 10 and 15. So you get 25. Now, what's happening is that the square age, what is it? Yeah, this method, square age, is the one I'm calling first. So because I called that one first, it has printed out this. And then I'm calling this one second and printing out this. And so it says when you sum our ages, you get that. So these are methods that take arguments. Now, you can also, I could have declared this variable and said double. Now, so if I do this, if I say double your age, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to, if I'm calling this method, I need to ensure that I'm providing a double, but I can't add a double to an integer and then save in an integer. So that's why I'm getting an error there. So I need to make this a double. So now remember the priorities that we have. And then we are returning now again our ages. So in this return, the return should have been double. So I'll have, so return our ages. So it's returning a double. So when I'm calling this, I'm supposed to call, maybe I'm supposed to provide an integer. Add ages, yeah. To provide an integer and then a double. But it shouldn't be integer again, it should be double. Okay, because you can't take a double and try to assign to an integer. You can do it if only you do what we call the typecasting. You need to put int in brackets before you can get it to work. But so long as I'm going to work with a double, then the variable that is ready to receive it must also be a double. And it's also, so when I declare it, the return type is double. So when I'm returning this, this is a double. And so it should be taken by a double. So when I'm calling it, I'm going to provide this. So if I run this now, because I'm having an integer and a double, and it says you get 25.9 because if you provide, if it were int, and you try to provide a double, so in this case, of course, you are going to get an error, because if I say this is int, and then I'm trying to provide a double in there, we're going to get an error, just like I said. So you can have situations where, of course, it doesn't have to be 2. You can have 3, 4, 5 parameters, and so on. It's all up to the person writing the program. But sometimes it's better to keep it simple, either 1 or 2, maybe maximum 3. Because if you're going to do it, it's better to have another method that will do something else rather than putting all so many parameters in one method. Okay, so now there's one other thing that, maybe 2 other things that we need to look at. There's something called overloading. So the word overloading in Java, when it comes to methods, is having methods that have the same name, but the different parameter lists. You all know that. I mean, if you create a folder in your computer, for example, and you want to save 2 files with the same name, you are going to get an error, or it's not going to accept it because you can't have 2 files with the same name. It's the same thing in Java. You can't have 2 methods with the same name. So in this case, like this, I couldn't have, okay, let me go back to my ints. Okay, it doesn't matter. So let me have ints. int, and then we are returning our integer. Okay, so int our ages. So this one should be int. It didn't matter. I could have just left it like that. Okay. Now I have square age. Now I can't have, for now, let me do this. I can't have another square age here. So that will be creating two methods with the same name. And of course, Java will not allow that. So, but there's something called overloading. And that overloading happens, you can have the same name, but the arguments that they take or the parameters can be different. So because this is integer, my age is integer, my age, and they are exactly the same. But if I were to add something like, yeah, another, okay, so let's int your age. Now what's happening here is that you have, okay, this is fine, return, there's no problem, age. Yeah, now at this point, duplicate parameter your age. Oh, okay. This one should be my age. Okay. My age. Okay. So you realize that we have the same name, square age, and this is also square age. But then I'm not getting any conflict because what is happening is that if you are calling the method, because they expect you that, I mean, they expect that when you are calling the method, you have to provide the parameter or the argument. So even though they are both square age, if I call and I provide one argument, it's going to run this one. If I call and I provide two arguments, it's going to run this one. So there's no conflict. Because if you, of course, if you call and you provide no argument at all, these methods don't work, are not going to work. And so again, it's like you can have cook as a method, and then another cook, but one cook can be cook rice, another one can be cook fish and kenke, whichever. And so I can just say ama.cook, then I'll put rice. In that case, ama knows that it's going to execute the method that talks of cooking rice. I can say ama.cook again, but then I can say fish and kenke. And ama knows that, no, so there's no conflict. So in this case, we call overloading. So the methods have the same name, but different parameter types. The word parameter and argument, they are the same. So they are used interchangeably. But in actual fact, technically, when you are declaring the method and you provide this, then we call parameters. So we say the method takes, this is the parameters you have defined. But when you are calling it and you provide the number, that is the argument. So the method will take an argument. So you realize that they're the same. So a method which is defined with parameters takes arguments. And the parameters and the arguments should always match. So if the parameters say integer and double, when you are calling it, you should provide integer and double as arguments before it will work. So if the cook says fish and kenke, you need to provide fish, and you can't say kenke and fish. It will not work. You need to go the same order as it is defined in the method. So I've already talked about overloading. So the last part of this is now, okay, so overloading. So this code here is just the same thing, serving two methods with the same name, but one has only string. You realize that arguments can also be strings. One has only string, the other has a string and an integer. So even though they are the same name, there's no conflict. So this one is talking of, when we come to talk of object-oriented and creating objects, then we'll see how this works. But for now, we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so let's recap what we have been doing this evening. So we started by saying that the method is a series of statements that carry out the task and can be used repeatedly. So in Java, we don't say function, we say methods. We define methods and then we call them to carry out the task. So you can call it within the class, you can call it from another class, and so on. in defining the method, there's a declaration, which is the header, the opening curly brace, the body, and then the closing curly brace. And we're saying that the declaration normally contains the access modifiers, and the common signature is just public static void, or public static double, or public static int, depending on whether the method returns a value or not. Then the return type of the method. So in the declaration, you need to provide the return type if the method will return a value or will return something. And of course, the name of the method, and then the parentheses, and then the arguments are optional, as we've seen. When we did the get address, we didn't put in any arguments. So the opening and closing parentheses, what goes in there is optional. It's all up to the person who is creating it. So those that take arguments, of course, they can, we can always say that they can return something. And so they can take the arguments, do some manipulation and return. So whatever is going to be returned must be stated there. So the return value type is the type of data that is going to be returned, either integer or double and all that. If a method returns nothing, it is void. So if I'm declaring the mow the lawn method, I'm going to make it void, or it just goes to mow the lawn, and then I don't expect anything back. But if it's going to return something, then the keyword return has to be there at the end to indicate that this method is returning something. You can't put void and put return, because that will give you that's a conflict, because you're saying that they shouldn't return anything, and then you end by putting return. And if you put integer or double or whatever, and you omit return, again, it's going to give you an error, because in declaring it, you said it was going to return something. So by the end, it should return that thing. So the return, it should be part of the keyword. Also, the keyword return must be in the method if it is supposed to return something. And then the parameter list. So that refers to the type and order of the parameters. The type, they can be integer, double, character, float, whatever. And then the order in which they are. So like I said, the way they are ordered is exactly how you would treat, when you are calling the method, the parameters, the arguments you would provide must match exactly with the arguments that are defined in the method. So you can call the cook method, which has kinker and fish, and then you provide rice. So that is going to be a conflict, because it will not know what to do with the rice anyway. So the name of the method and the parameter list together constitute what we call the method signature. Okay. Parameters are optional. That is, methods, they don't need to contain them. But in most cases, when you come across methods, you realize that they contain some parameters. So arguments that are passed to a method should have the same number, type, order. Okay, I've already explained this. So the word parameters and arguments, they are used interchangeably. They don't necessarily have to. It's simply what you pass to the method when you are either creating it or you are invoking it. And so we can have overloading. That is simply having two or more methods with the same name, but different parameter lists. So I can have the cook method with only rice. I can have cook with gari and beans. I can have cook with kinker and pepper and fish. So long as the parameter lists are different, there's no conflict. And we call that overloading. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this presentation. Question, comments, or arguments? Maybe, yeah. So at this point, I can take arguments as a method. I can stop the recording now. Yeah. Are there no arguments to take? Okay. Then I'll change myself to a method that doesn't take any argument. So now you can't ask any question because I wouldn't. Oh, somebody's hand has come up after. Yeah. Yes, David. Well, you need to unmute your microphone. Where is David? Do I see your hand? Yeah, you need to unmute your microphone.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Uh-huh.
Yes, so the question I want to ask is about the demonstration you just made.
Uh-huh.
I want to find out if it is okay to introduce a scanner to take input at this point in
And
order to
Sure.
get from end users
Yeah.
in this demonstration.
Yeah. So you can, yeah. So you can get input from a user, assign it to a variable, and then when you are calling the method, you can provide that variable. So you can do that. So it doesn't have to be physically a number. You see, this method that we called and we provided 40, it can be a variable. It can be what? Let's say money or something. So I could have had integer. Yeah. So if I say int, let's say money is 100. I can call the method and put money there. So that's the 100 goes in there. So it means this money could have come from input from a user. So remember when we did input what get int, you can have this. Of course, now of course I'm getting an error because we haven't created the object and other things. So you could have created the object, ask the user to type an input, take the input, assign to a variable, and then you call the method using the variable. It will work. So the user can type it in, and then, but here, what we are doing is that we're just providing it directly, but the user can type it in. So once we've done input, because input goes into variables. So once the input goes into a variable, you can use the variable for anything you want. In all the applications that we've been using, most of the times you provide inputs, either by clicking on something or by, of course, when we come to Windows, there are a whole lot of other things. We will not get to creating Windows with Java in this course, but there are a whole lot of other functions. I mean, of course, methods that listen to keyboard or mouse click. So you can say on right click, it should do this. And those are what we call event listeners. So they listen to whatever is happening, and then they take the input and do other things. But I'm sure when we come to advanced Java, you will come to start seeing some of those things. So the moment you can create a variable, then you can use it. So if I were to put 20 here, and now I say square age and I say money. Now here, what's the error here for? I'm getting add ages. Did that change it? Oh, okay. I don't have the method here. So this is add ages. Ages. The IDEs make coding very easy these days. When we were doing Java, I can tell you the way we used to sweat in the night because you use Notepad, and then when you are done, you compile nothing. It will tell you error, but it won't point to you where the error is. And you'll be sweating to read and see where yeah. So here, add ages, that's where so it's the same thing. So when I run, what it means is I'm going to get, when you square my age, you get 4,000 because the square age takes the 20 and then it goes ahead to multiply it by it and then it prints it out. So it works. If we put import Java dot, no, not capital, Java dot util dot scanner. Okay, then we can create our scanner objects. So scanner inputs new scanner and system.in. So we have all this .in. These are all syntaxes that are already on. Semicolons are the wrong place. Okay. Yeah, so once you have this, input new scanner system.in. Okay, now you can ask a user to enter any value. So before you even get here, so I can say system.out.print, ln, and I say, please enter your age. Okay, I can do this, and now I will have integer money. Oh no, not this time, not money. I'll just say age, just to avoid any conflicts here. It's going to be inputs dot next int. Okay, next int. Oh, the keyboards next int. Okay, yeah. So in this case, system.out. Okay, I need to close this. Where is the error again? Scanner. What is it saying? Import java.util.scanner. Oh, spell the util wrongly. Okay. Okay. So once the user enters the input, it is now coming into age, and then you can say square age, and then I put age here. So the user enters the age, and then we can take it, and I can say what is it, input, yeah, square age. Okay, I can now say that square age is what? Okay, so when I square your age, okay, age, I can say when I square your age, or when you square your age, whichever. Okay. Yeah, so when I run this, first of all, it's going to, at this point, it's going to ask, please enter your age. So I enter 45, and then I press enter. Then I say, when I square your age, I get this. When I sum your ages, I get that. So it has taken the 45, no, and then it has, where is it? Yeah, it has, so age is here. So once you enter 45, age now becomes 45. And because you are calling square age, it looks for square age, and it takes an integer. So the 45 multiplies by the 45, it puts it in results, and it prints this out. So it doesn't have to be hard coded in. You can ask a user for the input, and then you can do whatever you want to do. So sometimes this code, if you are really into programming, and what we are doing is just introduction. Most of the time, you can now take this code, and based on your own either thinking or wanting to troubleshoot certain things, you can change some things and see whether it will work. It won't break anything. It won't create. It won't do any damage to anything. So you can try as much as you want. Yeah, Joseph's hand is up. Is it? Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you. Yeah. I think I've stopped the recording. Yeah. Okay. Do you have something to say, Joseph? I can see. Joseph
So I wanted to know if we can get this recording.
Oh, sure. I've recorded it. So I'll upload it. I normally put it in, I think I put it in my YouTube channel. Do I? Yeah. And if you have you logged onto the platform? You should log onto the, because this is where everything is taking place. Of course, the quiz is coming up. It's, the mid-semester quiz 2 is starting tomorrow. I've readjusted it. I was saying it. So to start tomorrow until Tuesday. So the due date is 7th. So we've done quiz 1. Next week we're going to do quiz 3. I was telling you these are your mid-semester. Sometimes some people are still asking me when is mid-semester or all that. So once you log onto the system, the videos are there. Presentation 4, input and selection. If you click on it, It's opening. Let me see. Yeah, whether it is. We don't have enough space on this server. In fact, it's exhausted already. So what I do is I put it in YouTube. I put it in YouTube, and then I put the link here, and so you can watch it in YouTube, or you can download it. I mean, I'm sure some of you know how to download the videos from YouTube. So they are all there. So the recordings are all there. So this was in part 1 and part. So ever since we started, presentation 1 as the recording, 2 as the recording syntax, data types, the recording is there. It's just the same, well, the presentation. Of course, the recording has more explanation than the PowerPoint. So we've done 4, we've done loops. So I've uploaded that. Today we've done methods. So I'll upload what I've recorded as well. So it's all up there. And the quiz, like I said, you now have up to Tuesday. So it will be available from tomorrow. So tomorrow, the same approach, 20 questions. I will look at the time, whether to make it 10 minutes or maybe 12 or 11, it depends. I'll look at the questions and how they can be answered. Okay, any other question or comments? Else, yeah, we end matters for the day. So, okay, so let's, yeah, Daniel. Is it Daniel? Yeah, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes.
It's actually no question. The recording is still ongoing. So
It's still ongoing.
yeah.
Oh, it will be. Oh, okay. I thought I stopped.